Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, really one of the most chilling and frankly baffling missing person cases out of Texas, the disappearance of Brandon Lawson back in 2013. And this isn't just someone vanishing, you know? It's this incredibly tangled web of frantic phone calls, really confusing inconsistencies. It's a mystery that just stumped everyone, investigators, people online for what, over a decade now? So our mission for you today is to sort of sift through what we know, the sources available. We're mainly looking at a detailed YouTube video transcript that did a pretty good job compiling the timeline and statements. We're going to try and piece together what actually happened that night. Why did Brandon Lawson just seem to evaporate?
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here, I think, beyond the obvious tragedy of it all, is how this case forces you to confront just how limited our understanding can be when things just don't add up neatly. It really hinges on that very strange 911 call. Fragmented, panicked. It just raises way more questions right from the start than it answers. It's like a study in absence, really.
Right. And it all begins, like a lot of these stories, I suppose, with what seemed like a totally normal evening. So Brandon Lawson, who was he? He was 26, worked in the oil fields out near San Angelo, Texas, had a partner, 4 kids, a busy guy. Life had its challenges, like anyone's. The night he disappeared, August 8th, 2013, it started with something pretty common, right? He and his longtime girlfriend, they had an argument. Nothing totally out of the ordinary there. So Brandon decides to leave the house. This is around 11:54 p.m. He's planning to drive over to his dad's place nearby. Seems like a mundane end to a Thursday night. But then, maybe 45 minutes later, that ordinary feeling just shatters. He calls his brother Kyle, tells him he's run out of gas. Annoying, sure, but for Brandon Lawson, that moment, that was the start of this absolute nightmare.
And it's really crucial to focus on that first call to Kyle, because it sets up the, let's call it the official problem for the evening, just a simple stranded car. This detail, seemingly small, is key because it contrasts so sharply with the bizarre and terrifying stuff that happens immediately after. It makes you ask, how does running out of gas escalate like this? It suggests pretty strongly that whatever happened next wasn't just about an empty fuel tank.
Exactly. And that's where it takes this really chilling, really bewildering turn. Right after talking to Kyle, Brandon doesn't just, wait for help. He calls 911. And this call, honestly, it's the cornerstone of the whole mystery. The audio, if you've heard it, it's one of those unsettling things. It is so hard to decipher. There's static, maybe background noise, it's hard to tell, but Brandon's voice is just undeniably panicked. Distressed, frantic, he's talking fast, he keeps getting cut off. The dispatcher is clearly struggling to understand what on earth he's saying. Some of the phrases that people have tried to piece together, they're really unsettling. I'm in the middle of the field of safe, whatever that means. Then these really cryptic lines like, we're just pushing guys over, and we're out here going through a javelin on both sides, just what? And he also insists, weirdly, it's not trucking out of gas, which totally contradicts what he just told his brother Kyle. But maybe the most critical part is when the dispatcher asks, do you need an ambulance? And Brandon, clear as day through the static, says, no, I need to call police. Yeah. Then, bang, the call cuts off. Just like that.
And that specific request, asking for the police. You have to remember, Brandon had an active felony warrant out for his arrest at that time. This is an absolutely critical point. It just screams the question, why would someone actively trying to avoid the police call 911 for the police? It strongly suggests, doesn't it, that whatever he thought was happening right then, whoever he ran into, whatever situation he found himself in out there, it scared him way more than getting arrested, more than going back to jail. It points to some kind of immediate, overwhelming threat that just trumped his own legal problems.
That is such a critical distinction, yeah. It totally reframes how you think about what was going through his head. So, okay, that chilling call ends. How does anyone else find out something's wrong? Well, almost at the same time, it seems, another 911 call comes in. Not from Brandon, though. It's from an anonymous passerby. This person reports Brandon's truck, his white Ford F-150, parked kind of crooked, dangerously, really, on US 277. This is south of Bronte, Texas, near a rest stop area. Meanwhile, his brother Kyle and Kyle's girlfriend, they're already driving out with gas for Brandon. They have absolutely no idea about the frantic 911 call Brandon just made. None at all. So a sheriff's deputy gets sent out because of the passerby's call. And he arrives at Brandon's truck around the same time Kyle gets there. This is about 1:10 in the morning, August 9th now. The scene is, well, it's odd. The truck's there, yeah. But no Brandon. No sign of him anywhere. Truck doesn't look damaged. But Brandon's keys are gone. His cell phone is gone. And here's where that information gap is just huge. Neither Kyle nor the deputy at that moment knows Brandon himself called 911 asking for help minutes earlier. They're working with completely different pictures of the situation.
Right. And what's really intriguing or maybe frustrating is how little we know about that passerby's 911 call. The specific details, never made public. We don't know who it was, what exactly they saw besides the truck parked badly. Did they see anything else? Offer any more information? That lack of transparency, especially when every little detail could be vital, it just fuels speculation. It raises more questions about what might have been missed or maybe even withheld right at the beginning. It leaves a big hole.
The big hole, yeah.
Yeah.
And the confusion just keeps layering on.
Yeah.
While Kyle is there talking to the deputy by the truck, his phone rings. It's Brandon, but his voice. Kyle said it was incredibly faint, cutting in and out, agonizingly hard to understand. But through the static, Brandon apparently manages to say some really disturbing things. He says he's 10 minutes up the road from the truck, and then, even more chillingly, he says he's bleeding. Then, the call just goes dead. Again. Now, Kyle's interpretation of this, based on what little he could hear, was that Brandon said he was in the field. And because Kyle knew about that old felony warrant, that 2-year-old warrant, he made an assumption. He assumed Brandon was just hiding from the deputy who was now right there. So this decision probably made trying to protect his brother, right? It meant Kyle didn't tell the deputy Brandon had just called him, or that he was bleeding, or that he was the person Kyle was struggling to hear. Just a massive miscommunication.
If you step back and look at that, Kyle's misunderstanding, it had huge implications for what happened next, for the initial response. Think about it. If Kyle had known Brandon himself called 911 asking for the police, his reaction would almost certainly have been totally different, right? He would have told the deputy immediately, "My brother called 911. He needs help. He just called me. He's bleeding." You could have changed the whole focus, the urgency of the initial search. But the family only found out about Brandon's own 911 call days later, when they looked at his phone records, long after those critical first hours slipped away. It just shows how fragmented information can really derail things.
Yeah, it really does. So the aftermath, it's just as perplexing, isn't it? There was eventually an extensive search, professional SAR team search and rescue. That was October 24th, 2013. They searched all around where the truck was found. And despite all that effort, nothing, not a single trace of Brandon Lawson was ever found, ever. And since that night, absolute zero activity on his bank accounts, nothing on his cell phone. His case is officially classified as involuntarily missing, still unsolved. His family, they've always been really firm about this. They do not believe that old felony warrant had anything to do with why he disappeared. They're adamant he wouldn't run because of that. It wasn't in his character, they say, to just leave without warning. They fear something terrible happened to him. They fear for his safety.
And this brings up an important point about the sort of official narrative versus the family's experience. Investigators have stated there's no evidence of foul play found. But the family sees this complete lack of any trace, and their concerns just persist. And what's particularly revealing, maybe, are some reports from the local newspaper at the time, the Coke County Observer Enterprise, which, it's worth noting, was owned by the sheriff's wife. They published articles with headlines like, "Law enforcement concludes man is not in Coke County," which, how can you possibly prove that definitively? It's impossible. Another article got quite defensive, saying something like, "Many poor decisions made that night and during the next few days, however, they weren't made by the Coke County Sheriff's Office." Okay. And then maybe the most eyebrow-raising claim. The paper stated Brandon was hiding in the bush due to an outstanding felony warrant watching Deputy Neal while he was on the phone with Kyle. Now, that published story directly contradicts the one solid fact we keep coming back to. Brandon himself called 911 asking for police help. So you have to ask, why would he call the police if he was planning to hide from them? And why would the local paper, connected to the sheriff's office, print such a specific, seemingly contradictory claim? It feels less like reporting and more like narrative control, maybe. It definitely complicates things.
Yeah, it really does. And that's where all these different theories and just odd, conflicting details start to pile up, making it even stranger. First, we still don't have the full details on that other 911 call, right? The passerby who reported the truck, could they have seen more? Was there information there that just wasn't released or followed up on? It feels like a loose end. But here's where it gets really, really unsettling. It turns out that earlier that night, around 12:30 a.m., before the panicked 911 call, Brandon had made another call to Kyle. And in that call, Brandon apparently said something chilling. 3 expletives are chasing me out of town and the Mexicans in the neighborhood. Kyle, understandably, asked him, "Are you tripping? Are you on drugs?" But Brandon insisted, no, denied it was just in his head, so was someone actually chasing him.
That detail about being chased, it just throws another massive wrench into the works, doesn't it? Because while, yes, his old warrant was drug-related, his partner, who saw him last, was very clear he was not under the influence that night. She said he was stressed, sure, from the argument, stressed about starting a new job, but not impaired. So do you take that chasing comment literally? Was it paranoia from stress? Or was something else going on? It also feeds into the idea maybe other people were involved, especially when you hear the speculation. And some people really insist on this, that you can maybe hear other voices faintly in the background of that 911 call. It supports the idea he wasn't alone out there. Maybe he encountered multiple people. An audio specialist did try to enhance the call, but honestly, it was largely inconclusive. Didn't give much concrete info beyond the obvious distress.
And then there's just the profound lack of physical evidence. It's just astounding, especially out there. Rural Texas, it's arid, semi-arid, finding absolutely nothing. No tracks, no disturbed ground or plants, no dropped items, no signs of a fight, no blood, especially after that big professional search later on. It's not just weird, it almost feels impossible. If he was impaired and wandered off, surely there'd be some signs, some tracks. If he was attacked, you'd expect evidence of a struggle. If he just walked away trying to disappear, again, tracks. The absolute void of any physical clues makes it even stranger. It fuels these unsettling ideas that, I don't know, something truly inexplicable happened, or maybe whatever did happen was just meticulously cleaned up.
Exactly. That void of evidence isn't just a missing piece. It is a piece of the puzzle itself. It forces you to consider things way outside the usual missing person scenario.
Yeah.
Like you said, maybe a highly effective cover-up or something harder to explain. Or maybe just an incident type that law enforcement wasn't equipped to deal with in that specific desolate place. The silence out there, it almost speaks louder than anything else.
So where does that leave us? What does it all mean? Brandon Lawson's case is just profoundly bizarre, deeply unsettling, and totally unsolved. People are still looking for him, holding out hope. There are websites, online groups, all dedicated to finding answers. But the sheriff's office, considered a cold case, they get calls, but tragically, no new leads, no new information to give. And that unsettling question just hangs there over that Texas landscape. What really happened in that field on August 8th, 2013? What caused a man to make that desperate call for help, then just vanish, leaving behind this confusing trail of contradictions and so many unanswered questions? Was it something human, something related to the environment out there, or something else entirely, something far more inexplicable that took Brandon Lawson that night? It's a mystery that really sticks with you, reminding you that sometimes the answers are just completely out of reach.